Yay, we are on Facebook Live. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And so today we are talking about climate change, the environment, sustainability. And so welcome to the F Show. Our guests are activists, creatives, ensuring that we are aware of the main issues that we are tackling in this, what has now become a crisis. We are also very excited that we have our own young activist in Raisa, who's going to be talking on behalf of all the children of the world, Raisa. You do know that's what happens, eh? They get one person and you represent everybody. But welcome, we're so happy to have you with us. And we know that you've been challenging your school and your peers and the education system to take more responsibility. So this is really exciting. And then we have our friends all the way from the US and Brazil, and we are sitting in Johannesburg. So I'm going to start with you, Noel, because I know that you have to probably run away. But before we start, we've got a little video that we'd like to show, your promo video. Congratulations on this festival, the first of the first of the first. So you're going to tell us about it. Wow, that looks amazing. Absolutely amazing. Tell us
Thank you.
about the snow.
Thank you. So, my name is Noel Koch. I am the one of the executive director and one of the co-founders of the organization NUF. NUF stands for Nature, Environment, and Wildlife Filmmakers. We were established in 2017 as a result of, the world uses so much, consumes so much of Africa's nature and wildlife. Yet, yeah, in Africa, there was no platform for filmmakers, conservationists, broadcasters, storytellers, scientists to come together and discuss the nature and wildlife film industry. Film and television in Africa is booming. It's really doing well. However, nature and wildlife filmmaking is the least transformed sector of the film and television industry. I mean, to find a Black African nature and wildlife filmmaker a couple of years ago was rarer than some of the species that we are trying to protect all over the planet. And so as a response to that, we decided to create the Nature, Environment, and Wildlife Filmmakers Organization. We have a number of programs, but our marquee program is the NUF Congress, which normally takes place in July each year. However, enter COVID-19, we had to reimagine what we were going to do. And so, we looked at all the options. We looked at Zoom, we looked at webinars, we looked at all of that, and we said, we asked a lot of people, what they think would be the best format. And so many of our delegates said to us, the thing about us that they miss the most, or that they would miss the most, is that energy in the room and that sense of community and that sense of coming together. And so our theme for Congress this year, even before COVID-19 had hit, was that, there's a Zulu word called imbizo that that Google describes as when either religious leaders or kings or traditional healers or kings call a gathering for healing or to discuss important matters. Now, we are not traditional healers or kings, but we do understand that there are important matters to discuss. And so we say, you know, as all the unheeded warnings about species extinction, as the world continues to elect mad people as their leaders, as all the unheeded warnings about climate change and species extinction and you know, come home to roost, we say, don't bury your head in the sand. Come and join us at NUF Congress 2020, because our theme this year is Stories of Hope, inspiring a call to action. Because now more than ever, I think we need to have stories of hope. And now more than ever, we need to inspire a call to action. I think for too long, people regarded nature and wildlife or conservation storytellers as preaching doom and gloom. But for the very first time, meddling with wildlife has put a stop to the entire planet. And now, as filmmakers, we have an opportunity to speak to a global audience because they are ready to listen. They didn't want to listen. Now that it's stopped the entire planet and is sadly killing so many people across the planet, I think they will listen. And we need to take this opportunity to get the message across in terms of, you know, we need to ensure, you know, for so long, we've been preaching that, you know, you can have a great health infrastructure, you can have all, you know, public infrastructure, you can have everything, but if you do not have a strong environmental infrastructure, everything will fall to pieces. You know, that needs to be the foundation that all economies are built on. And, you know, for too long, we took that for granted. And now we are, you know, we're reaping the fruits of the fact that we took that for granted. The Congress this year is a response to COVID-19. We decided to have it as a VR, a virtual reality Congress. And so most of the Congress is actually taking place on the inside of what is a virtual reality headset. And this is what, and so you go inside this, we have created this universe in this VR space. We have a networking room, which is a watering hole in Africa. We have a live room, which is an amphitheater in a rainforest up in Congo. We have a cinema room, we have meeting rooms, and we are extremely proud that we have National Geographic's first ever photo exhibition on the inside of a VR headset. The reason why we went with the Joel Sartore photo arc exhibition is that it has a cohort of 12 African scientists. They're a cohort of 12 African scientists who are studying some of the species that Joel Sartore photographs. And so we were able to feature these 12 African scientists in that exhibit, and we really are proud about that. The other night, I met him in the VR world. I haven't met him in person yet. I met him in the VR world, and he came out to look at this exhibition that has never been done before. You know, we have delegates. We have 170 delegates from South Africa. We have about 35 delegates from the USA. We are growing a coalition of underrepresented voices in this particular space. And so we have about 40 delegates from the rest of Africa, because we're trying to create this common united African voice. And then we also have about 40 delegates from India, because in this particular space, all those voices are underrepresented. I'm so excited that there are colleagues here from South America, because that is where we are going next. We find that we have the same kind of challenges as whenever we meet at these festivals, etc., that so many of the filmmakers in the nature and wildlife space from South America have the same challenges as us as Africans. They are also underrepresented. It's also Europeans and Americans who go into those places and tell our stories of nature and wildlife. And you know, we can't have that anymore. We need to tell our own stories. We need to tell it from our perspectives. If we, you know, if we're going to save, you know, very often they will come in and do a film and take it back to to the places where they live, and we don't even get to see it. It's not even broadcast in our areas. We cannot save what we can't see, you know. And so it is important that we need to tell our own stories, and that is what we have been doing at our Congress, you know, over the past 3 years. And very quickly, the last thing I'm going to talk about is, there's a whole lot of programs. There's workshops that are taking place, and it's all about building capacity of African filmmakers, building capacity of African storytellers. And one of the programs we're really excited about is we have an underwater filmmakers lab, because a couple of years ago, we wanted to do a panel on underwater filmmaking, and we couldn't find one Black African underwater filmmaker on the entire continent. How ridiculous is that? We're a continent surrounded with 30,000 kilometers of coastline. We have a lot of Black African divers, but we couldn't find Black African underwater filmmakers. You know, again, how are we going to tell those stories? How are we going to inspire our kids to save what's in the ocean if we don't tell those stories? So very quickly, in a nutshell, that's who we are. For those, I'm so honored, and thank you so much for having us on here. Really do appreciate it.
Thank you. It's so important for us to know the good work you are doing now. And we want to be part of that virtual reality. So please, we're all waiting on the F show. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. I have to run. Thank you so much.
Okay. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Hi, Mike.
Hello.
In the US, we are going to show a little clip of something. We hope you like it. Since you said there are many clips online, let's hope this one works.
Okay, so hi everyone. My name is Mike Ewall. I'm the founder and director of Energy Justice Network. I'm going to flip over to my presentation. Okay. Like Bradley, I've been at this for a while, for about 23 years in my case, since I was in high school, first fighting off a trash incinerator in my home county in Pennsylvania. And I've been helping communities ever since do the same. I also don't come from a big environmental group. I have a small nonprofit that I run. We help communities all across the country. I've been a volunteer most of these years, but make very tiny bits of money now, enough to scrape by and help everyone. So we have a lot of information up on our website. If you go to energyjustice.net/incineration, you'll find copies of whole reports that were written about pyrolysis and other types of incinerators. So feel free to use that information as a resource and research base as you start to learn more about this stuff.
Thank you. So Mike, that was just 55 seconds.
Okay.
And now we hand over to you. Please tell us the work that you do. Tell us what's happening in the US. And as you know, we are all very excited about your elections. So you'll have to say something about that too. Welcome, welcome.
No pressure. Okay, so hi. The founder and director of Energy Justice Network. We're a national group in the US. We do some international work on select topics, but mostly throughout the US. And we help communities fight off dirty energy and waste industry facilities. So we've done a lot to stop proposed coal power plants, proposed natural gas power plants, but are more focused even on biomass and waste incinerators of every sort, whether they're burning trash or trees or hazardous waste or you name it. They've been trying to burn it. And so we are opposed to all of that and have a very strong track record of helping communities stop those facilities in their tracks. We have an environmental justice lens that we work through. So we understand that there's this trend of environmental racism, of where these facilities are located tend to be in communities of color or in communities that might not be majority people of color, but still are more people of color than the average in the US. And that is a sad trend that we see. And also low-income white communities get dumped on a lot as well. So our focus is on showing that that's the case and helping communities stop these. Now, there are a lot of technologies that we help people fight that are greenwashed as if they're green energy. And it's important for your listeners to understand that every dirty thing out there pretends they're clean anymore. whether you're talking about burning trash, burning trees and grasses under biomass, biofuels, any kind of ethanol or biodiesel, nuclear power, even coal is clean coal now. Natural gas pretends to be clean when it's not. And other schemes like carbon sequestration is a problem that perpetuates fossil fuels as well. Geoengineering to try to solve the climate without addressing the root causes of it, but just trying to do quick fixes that could harm the planet even more. You also see a lot of policies promoted that we consider to be false solutions, like pollution trading schemes, carbon offsets, even carbon taxes we've been very critical of because of the way that can look on the ground. So there are a lot of climate and energy policies, even the ones promoted by, in our country, the Democrats, the folks that are supposedly the good ones, but not really. They promote very dangerous policies as well that harm the communities that we're trying to support and protect. It's important to also recognize that the big environmental groups, the bigger ones that have the budgets to lobby federal governments, to put calendars in the mail to people that they want to get donations from, all the groups that have the biggest amount of resources are the ones that are doing the work that is least worth supporting. They are the ones making compromises and saying that some of these technologies that are harming communities are actually good, or clean energy, or they'll enable a policy that says, yes, wind and solar, but they'll let dirty things sneak in the same policy and get promoted, or they'll promote these carbon trading types of things that end up harming communities that are less politically powerful in order to get reductions in more politically powerful communities. So these are things that we would all combine and say are false solutions that need to be stopped. It's important to recognize that the solutions are also not just about power plants or automobiles, that the zero waste systems, the materials that we use, account for a large portion of the pollution, of the extraction of resources, of the disposal of waste, of the climate emissions even. And so having zero waste solutions, which means no burning and reducing the amount of waste by at least 90% that we have to landfill, that is also a big part of climate and environmental justice solutions. So is addressing animal agriculture, which is a harder topic to talk about with some, but we need to recognize that eating animals, eating meat and dairy, contributes to the single largest source of climate emissions and all sorts of other environmental problems around the world, from not just global warming, but deforestation, water pollution, air pollution, land use, all sorts of problems. And that we need to understand that moving toward a plant-based or vegan lifestyle around the world and taking away the subsidies that prop up animal agriculture is also a major thing that we need to address. So we work at this at the bottom up level. We work with grassroots communities, helping them stop one project at a time and then build power up from the bottom, because we've learned that, and this will segue into their politics question, we've learned that the top-down solutions don't work, that the politics are so corrupt at a national level, not to mention international levels, but at national governments, corporations wield so much power that we cannot get good policies through. We're very lucky if we can stop bad policies, but getting good ones through is next to impossible until we democratize our government. And there's starting to be more of a movement for that in the US in terms of election reform. But right now, what we're looking at is an election where we're choosing between a fascist type of president that we currently have and a corporate militarist imperialist president like we normally have. And there is no one good that is really an option that has a chance of winning in the US. Unfortunately, Bernie Sanders, who had an A grade on climate change on many scorecards, they ganged up on him, made sure he couldn't win in the Democratic primary. So we're now choosing between two candidates that both have a failing grade on climate. Biden earned an F grade just last year on climate change. And of course, if you look at his record on racism, on imperialism, militarism, on corporate power, on healthcare, on numerous issues, he's pretty terrible. It's just he's not as terrible as Trump. And so people are eager to get Trump out of here, and we'll find out hopefully soon that that has happened. But we'll still be dealing with the problem that I hope the rest of the world recognizes, that the US is not somehow on a good track just by having someone like Biden be president. We need the level of international resistance to US imperialism and militarism that you will continue to see under a Biden presidency, just as we will continue to struggle if we end up with President Biden. So I'll just leave that there.
Wow, that's just like, thank you so much. Succinct, clear, and I suppose you have a difficult choice between the two, and so it's like the better of the worst, right?
Yes.
Worst and worstest.
Lesser of evils.
Yes. Okay. So Raisa, we come to you, and let's hope after what Mike says to us that the youth have the energy to challenge us and to push forward with all the good things that young people can do. So welcome, Raisa. We are so happy that you could be with us and grace the space. It's always important to have young people. And I think you sometimes much clearer and more succinct than we are. So welcome. Tell us about the work that you do. We actually have a video. Let us show the video. Please, Justine.
Amanda! Viva Rambo Nation! Viva!
Viva! I will boycott school every Friday because how can I prepare for a future that has been stolen from me? I have been in contact with the department and they're trying to engage. They said that they're setting up a youth dialogue, and while it's important to communicate with the youth and set up dialogues, it's not action. It has to be accompanied by action. There's the small things like banning plastic and like placing recycling bins everywhere and introducing it into the schooling curriculums.
I feel very, very excited to see school children here today. I think it's amazing, their passion, their commitment, and their level of understanding. These are highly intelligent, really beautiful people, and they are really serious about trying to save the future for everyone, trying to make sure that the air stays clean enough so that we can continue to breathe and that there's water for future generations. We need a world fit for future generations.
And my parents, they're supportive. They're very, very worried, of course. They're especially worried because I'm in matric and there could be assessments and stuff on the Fridays. Yeah, it's scary. I'm not going to lie, I am absolutely terrified. It's a big step to take, but somebody has to take it.
Very good to see young people. I think we also have some photographs, so we'll show them as you talk. But please introduce yourself to us. Tell us what you're doing and why.
Hello. So my name is Raisa Nur Mohammed, and I like to call myself an intersectional activist because, you know, everything is so intersectional. I started my activism last year. I attended climate protests, and I did a lot of gender-based violence protests as well. And I started my own little organization that does we do performance art pieces to raise awareness, just because I'm a big art kid, and I wanted to do something that you know, that I can do, and like I wanted to do my own bit. So then we started doing performance art pieces, and then this year, in the beginning of the year, like with the Australia fires, I just got really angry because Australia has a very similar environment and like ecosystem to South Africa, and we do have fires. And if fires happen here, which they will, our economy just won't be able to deal with it like Australia's did. And I felt like I hadn't even started matric yet. If I could see that, surely someone in government could see that. Why aren't they doing anything? So I just got angry, and I emailed the Department of Environmental Affairs, and I was like, listen, you have to declare climate emergency, you got to do this, and if you don't, I will boycott school every Friday. And that's what I did. Oh, this seems like a lifetime ago, pre-COVID. Oh, wow, I can't believe that it's this year. I started alone. Um, no one knew I was there. I was scared. My father was, oh, I didn't tell my parents until that day. And I was sitting alone on a rock in the heat for the whole day. And it was so weird because no one knew I was there. I didn't know if it would make a difference. So like what if I'm just sitting here for nothing? And then it began to take off a bit, and then the next week two girls from school joined me, as well as this boy from another school, King David. And like after that first day, there was never a day where someone wasn't there with me, and it was just so beautiful. Yeah, we even did it in the rain. Oh, that day, that was the second day. It was raining so badly. We had to stand the whole day and our knees were so sore. But we did it and it was so worth it. And I learned so much from that and after that. And like I began to be like really aware of my privilege. Um I was privileged enough to be able to have a school to boycott, and the school's in a safe area. I'm privileged enough to have access to the information. It's just there's so like that discussion is so massive, that discussion of privilege. And one of the biggest things that I was pushing for in my boycott is that we're always told what we should be doing to help the environment, what we should be doing, why we should be doing it, but there's hardly ever an acknowledgement that it is not us who are the cause of climate change, it's the industries. And a few months, like I think the next month or 2 months later, I was able to attend a youth dialogue with the Minister of Environmental Affairs, Barbara Creasy, and like she was acknowledging everything wrong and it was really hopeful at first because she was like, yes, this is why climate change is bad. But then when it came to what they're doing, she was like, okay, this is what you can do, and it is the youth's job to change public perception. And she was shaming people for not throwing their things away. And then I don't know, I got angry and afterwards I went to her and I was like, listen, you it's like to tell us that it's our job to change public perception and to shame ordinary people for not being able to throw their things away. It doesn't it like it takes away from the fact that it's in fact the industries who are at fault. And oh, so here's the um here's the photo of Vanessa Nakate at Davos, the photo where she was cropped out of the photo of the four white activists. And that's another thing that I've really been looking at this month, the difference between not this month, this year, the difference between Western activism and non-Western activism. So there's really, it's a massive thing. You can see the difference in narrative. The fact that the West is so, like when they talk about climate change, they're so focused on climate change. They don't acknowledge the problems, the root, the cause, the colonization that resulted in this. And there's a lot of whitewashing. And the fact that Greta Thunberg is the leader of the climate movement, she's a privileged white girl from a European country, from a really, really privileged country. So her narrative is definitely not going to cover everything. And it definitely doesn't acknowledge the colonization. And so here, in that photo, it was what really angered me about that situation was that Vanessa Nakate was an activist before all of that. She was a person before that. There's a reason she was there in the first place. And yet she only got the attention she deserved in the context of four other white girls. And like from then, whenever she's discussed, it's in the context of four other white girls. It's not in her own context. And even then, Western media has taken her story and taken her, and now she represents Africa. And that's a lot of tokenism. And there's just like, I've really been looking at the divide within activism and activists and just really looking at the narrative. And what I've learned is that it's so important to look at it in the context of everything else. You can't just look at climate change like that. and Western solutions aren't ideal, they're not perfect, and they're not going to work. Like the discussion with veganism, I've been really looking at how the West is pushing veganism as a solution, when they're not, like, they don't acknowledge the colonization and the capitalism that comes with it. And a lot of vegan products are produced in a capitalist way. And it's not to say that being vegan is bad. Being vegan is great. If you can do it, then go for it. But that needs to be part of the discussion. Like, there needs to be an acknowledgement that there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. And there needs to be a complete push away from capitalism and to sustainability. And there's also that massive thing of it's a privilege to be able to be vegan, because in a country like South Africa, where people don't know where their next meal is coming from, they don't have the privilege to be able to prioritize veganism. So there's a lot, mainstream media pushes a lot of solutions to climate change, and they just push a lot of things that don't address the root of the problem. They don't address the capitalism that comes with it, and they don't address the racism and how it's going to disproportionately affect people. Like, we all know that it's going to be the non-Western countries, the previously colonized and the overexploited countries, who are affected the most by climate change. And out of that is going to be majority people of color and majority Black women that are disproportionately affected, and that needs to be constantly part of the narrative. And we need, while we push for climate solutions, we need to push for change. Like, to implement climate things into the educational syllabus, you need to ensure that all the children are in school first, because it's such a massive thing. And that's one thing I really love is the Climate Justice Charter, because it really the Climate Justice Charter was created by there was a Climate Justice Coalition, and they've been working on it for years, and it pushes for sustainability, food security, and a just transition. And it's a really brilliant initiative, and they handed it over to Parliament, and they're going to sue if they don't implement the Climate Justice Charter, which is really cool. And I feel like, and it's South African, and for me, that's just one example of why it's so important to have our own solutions and put things in our own context, and acknowledge that there's so many people and there's so many solutions, and just the importance of grassroots and not idolizing anyone, not placing anyone in the center of the movement, and just working as a collective. Yeah.
Thank you, Raisa. Very, very clear. Thank you. We'll continue the conversation. Let's go to Alessandra. Hi, Alessandra, how are you? You're in Brazil.
I'm fine. Yes, I am.
You're in Brazil. Could you please tell us what you do? We do have slides that will go with your presentation. Would you like us to start that now?
You can start in 1 minute. Okay. I work with innovation inspired by nature. That's what I do over my past, I don't know, around 10 years. I'm more strong on the past 5 years. And my role or my mission is trying to give a new way of looking to nature as a very high technology place. So if you don't admire, you don't conserve. Because sometimes people, they tend to believe that technology relies on our phone, our computer, on intelligence, artificial intelligence, and technology, first of all, relies on us, relies on nature. So I think a lot of things that we fight today, that we have these issues nowadays, because we don't recognize us as a species anymore. We don't recognize us as nature, as part of nature. So just telling the stories about those slides, I learned about biomimicry first time in Schumacher College, which is a very interesting school in the interior, the countryside of England. Then I studied at biomimicry, US, 2 times. And I start to practice this at the Amazon, which is the following slide, I guess. I try to be fast over here. So it was very cool, because at the Amazon, we didn't have internet. And the best connection that you could have is between people and nature, us and nature, and how we as a collective intelligence could learn together. So what we try to do as a biomimicry is looking to just 3.8 billion of years of evolution, and to understand how we can solve design challenges, our challenges, the challenges that we human beings face it. Então, biomimicry can be used as a model, as a measure, or as a mentor. But the great philosophy of looking into nature like this is to build, first of all, this connection of alive connection. What matters, what is important. And what I do a lot, it's trying to make those bridges with several exercise, eyes, how to say that, blindfolded, right?
Yes, yes, blindfolded.
So, because we need to remember our brains that we have much more senses than just like the eyes. Sometimes it smell a fruit, but we have just very evolved body with full of senses in order to connect into the world, to understand, to work as antenna, to work how can we dance this music of the contest, because somehow we forgot. And this is life principles. I use those a lot, how we can compare those lanes about how life creates conditions conducive to life, to many things, to business, to project, to urbanism, whatever you can do this bridge. So we have a more integrated interdependence view regarding what we are doing in comparison from where life begins. So gives you a broader view what matters, and things has to fill in those gaps. So it's not saying it's better or bad than sustainability, but it's another lanes to view, to compare life into business. Sorry, it's in Portuguese, but some applications of life principles into business, into workshops, into roundtable understanding how we perceive to life, and how we can enhance our behavior by looking to nature's recipe. You can move forward. So this is just one example when I was a partner of GCP. So I'm founder of BioInspirations here in Brazil, a practice of biomimicry. And this project was designed first at GCP, one architectural practice. So the design was inspired by this the prairie dog and this Bernoulli principle. So just an example of how biomimicry can be tangible. And here it's a lot of projects that I do with ECOS. It's a school here in Brazil that work with corporations with design thinking, and I mixed up the design thinking with biomimicry thinking. So how can we get ideas out of nature inspirations? And this is so important because we are so disconnected. So it's very important. And I do teach at the Master Ecological Design Thinking at Schumacher as well, with same philosophy. You can move forward. And some other schools where we understand the phenomenology, observation skills, very simple fields, very simple things, but how we connect to our words, alive words. It really tells how we care about what we eat, what we buy for clothes, what we do in our living. And so I work a lot with those basic simples in order to enlarge those bigger concepts. A picture of a class in the Amazon. We miss the class this year because of COVID, but that's the classroom. And this is a very beautiful region. The picture is not so good. This is working with organizations and people that they don't like to go to the parks because they are concerned about sometimes spider. But if you look how nature can be very technology and how can you learn together with those lanes, we can look into nature as an inspiration. So it was some representation, and we did some workshops to to understand what kind of skin do we need to design. Older people, what kind of clothes they have to wear, what kind of skin are like it's not only using cotton, but what are their needs? Like, how can we make skins to perform as the skin needs to perform? So we are talking about building layers. Clothes are building layers. So what kind of layers are we building? Which sort of material? So this was just a little example how it's in Portuguese, sorry, how we did that in the fashion week. You can move forward. I'm Judge, and I recommend if you can rewind this other one, because I think this is really cool and it's open for everyone. It's called Biomimicry Global Design Challenge. It's open, it's free for everyone. And it's very interesting. I've been judging this since 2016, and they look into climate change, they look into food system, and now they are looking to the ODS. And it's kind of very good way to learn and to practice. And I think the last one is we need to look into our challenges and into our environment in a more integrated thing. So technology relies on life. So technology, biology, design, nature, innovation, it's all the same thing with different words. But what we have to do as designers or human beings is to do things that life creates conditions conducive to life. So that's like my mission, to look into nature as a classroom, a huge classroom, and understand us better as human beings, because I think this lack of understanding, it really gives more room for industrialization, for this. I like what Haisha said about going vegan. It's not only going vegan, but what are you going to eat? So eating is a political act. So whatever you choose to prepare, to cook, doesn't matter if you're vegetarian, if you're vegan, or if you eat meat, like from where you buy, what kind of food do you buy? Are you buying food that is close into your neighborhood, or are you buying overseas food? Like, understanding all the relationship from the time that you wake up until the time that you go to sleep, where the things that you have in your house comes from, what the water that you drink is coming from, is in your city or is super away from your city that you don't have an idea how long this water needs to travel in order to get into your faucet. And you're flushing. If you're lucky to flush, yeah, waste. Which the issue? I think we never put waste in clean water, but that's another issue here. But if you're flushing, where is going? Like, are you engaged how your neighborhood, your city is flushing this, which is not a problem, because we're talking about organic matter, to become a problem, to pollute system. Like, are you connected to those things? So I really believe those simple analysis and simple connections from how you survive by eating and drinking water, it really can open another conversations and open for better solutions regarding sustainability and regarding really what really matters.
Thank you. That was really very, very good, very clear. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mandy, we're coming to you now, and I left you really for the last, because as a journalist and training that you do, I think a lot of what all of the other guests are doing as activists, as NGOs, etc., you're the one who can get it out to the newspapers, and you can make sure that the journalists have the right idea. Please tell us about the work that you do, and that the training in particular that you are involved in.
I was just thinking, I always say that my parents named me Amanda, which Mandy is short for, but they should have named me Cassandra, because I've been yelling about climate change for such a long time into the void. I can date the first time I was exposed to the science of climate change back to 1992. I was a very new journalist then. And I have been reading the science ever since, and I have been shouting about climate change wherever I possibly can. I can tell you this little fact. I believe I am the very first journalist in South Africa to have covered climate change in an online, an in-flight magazine on an aeroplane. That's not the kind of places that you normally would have seen climate change stories. And I got a lot of flack, by the way, from readers for those articles that I did. But I felt that it was one place that I could get to people who weren't hearing this message. I've become, over the years, a science journalist. I would have called myself a lifestyle journalist in the 1990s when I was writing about health. But health forced me to read science and to start learning how to understand science. It was a very long and difficult process because there was no one to help me. So when I did start thinking of myself as a science journalist and start understanding what I had learned over the years, I felt a need to give back. I felt a need to help other people. And so I engaged wherever I could with training journalists about science. Science is a very useful tool. It's a neutral thing. It can be used for good or bad, but the findings of science underpin all the stuff that all of you have been talking about. And understanding science and understanding how to read it, assess it, contextualize it, and then convey it to the public is very, very powerful once you know what you're doing. I'll give you a little example that's popped up today, for instance. Well, in the last few days, I'm sure that some of you have seen the Guardian article about the sleeping giant of the Arctic awakes, the methane seeps. One of my contacts on social media asked me what I thought of that. And I said, well, I'm going to wait and see. They were horrified because everybody reads that sleeping giant tipping point as, you know, shocking and horrifying. But if you look at the science, first of all, that science, as was said in the story, has not actually been analyzed and finalized. There is no evidence at this point that Arctic methane is seeping into the atmosphere in large quantities, and there's no way of assessing whether that's going to happen suddenly in the future. It's unlikely, is what I read. But, and I said this to my friend online, the most interesting science of the last month for me has been a survey of nitrous oxide, the nitrous oxide budget of the world. And I'm talking to the scientists who did the survey to find out in more detail what this means. But nitrous oxide is the third most powerful and important greenhouse gas. It's carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide. The reason nitrous oxide has risen dramatically over the last decade or so, one of the really important reasons is because of agricultural practices. And one of those practices that's releasing nitrous oxide into the atmosphere is fertilizer, crops, the excessive use of fertilizer. That's something we can do something about. We can't run to the Arctic and plug the methane seeps, but we can actually do something as activists in the here and now about agricultural practices that harm the atmosphere, that increase global heating. I'm the president of the South African Science Journalists Association. I'm also the vice president of the World Federation of Science Journalists. And one of the reasons why I'm there is to represent Africa. I was very excited about what Raisha is saying about the global south and the global north, because that is a big bugbear of mine, and it's something I talk about frequently when I'm training journalists. Is remember that most of the information that you're seeing online, that you're receiving, is from scientists who are weird. Does anybody know what weird stands for? White, educated, industrial, rich, developed. Okay? It's not coming at you. It's not coming at you from African or South American scientists, not even for Malaysian scientists. There is science happening in those areas, and it's critical science. If you look, for instance, at science done in Ethiopia on sustainable agriculture, it's unusual and interesting stuff. Yeah, that's one of my articles in the City Press. And I think that it's really important that journalists in the Global South look at climate change issues from our perspective. Raisa is right. We need to decolonize science as well as everything else. And I'll give you an example of that as well. Last year, you know, when they decided that the next COP was going to happen in Glasgow, which is now not going to happen because of COVID, there was a big argument on Twitter about the way people get to COP. They fly in fleets of jets. And a very well-known British Extinction Rebellion activist suggested this. Oh, well, they can come by train, you know, across Europe and Asia and America, and hop over on boats. And we can send, look, the Global North will send sailing ships, a fleet of sailing ships to the Global South to pick up the ministers and presidents. And I said, honestly, you think that ministers and presidents in the Global South have a couple of months in hand to sail to the Global North to attend this thing? You have to be more realistic than that. There's a disjunct in this world between the way climate change issues and climate change processes are approached between the Global South and the Global North. One of those things Raisa mentioned, the fact that we talk constantly about eating less meat, and I have no problem with that if you're talking about the Global North, which is where you want to change very seriously agricultural practices because they are dangerous. But in the Global South, if you're going to tell a family, a tribe in Tanzania or Kenya that they cannot have animals, first of all, that's not possible because the land that they are grazing animals on is so marginal that in order to put crops on it, you're going to have to overuse fertilizers and make huge demands of irrigation. And secondly, those animals are their insurance policy against hard times. So you need to think, when you are a journalist writing about climate change in the Global South, about the nuances that affect your own country. And that's one of the things that I try to get across when I'm training journalists. It's very important that we get the stories out in ways that are meaningful, relevant, and accessible, friendly to the people who need to consume them. Because a lot of what has been told and done in media, social media, blogs, etc., about climate change, as I said, comes from the Global North. It's not accessible to people in the Global South. It's not relevant to them. It's not talking their metaphors. I always say it's not just about the actual language that you speak, it's also about the language of your life, the idioms in which you think, what's relevant to you, what's happening in your culture. We need to be able to tell stories in ways that are meaningful to the people we're trying to reach. And we desperately, desperately need to reach our people. They need to understand what is going on because, as once again Raisa said, we in the Global South are going to be hit much harder than the Global North, and we are much less resilient. We have less to cope with. In South Africa, for instance, I think it's 12% of our land is arable. And if we endanger that land by, for instance, not by tilling heavily, and I had a slide as well, I was going to show you a picture I took of Free State land in the 2016-2017 drought, totally bare, nothing there. We drove back from our holiday in the Free State through a dust cloud that looked exactly like those pictures you get of the Dust Bowl in the 1930s in the United States. thick dust cloud. We had to stop on the side of the road. That, I got back home, and a geologist, a soil scientist lives over the road from us. He said to me, you know what, this is on my porch here. Free State Fines, that's what it's called. It's topsoil from the Free State. That topsoil is lost forever in terms of its nutrition, in terms of its ability to sustain life. We can't afford that. And as South Africans, as people in the global South, we need to understand that in order to be able to do something about it, even in the simplest terms. Last year, I did an article for City Press on the various political parties and what their policies around the environment and climate change were. They are token policies. And if you vote and you advocate and you write letters and you protest and you talk about this, that is something you need to be able to do. But you need to be able to do it from the bottom up. It can't just be people like you and me and people like Raisa going to Parktown Girls. As she said, she's privileged. It needs to be understood by the people who are really at the rock face, at the bottom of the pile. The people that it's all coming down on need to understand what's happening, and they need to understand what they can do about it, not in the privileged terms of change your light bulbs and eat less meat and don't use plastic bags and that kind of thing. They need to understand how they can implement activism that will change the way we work and the way we live in terms of industries, in terms of transport, in terms of energy, in terms of water.
Wow, thank you, Mandy. Wow. I have to say that this conversation today has been just phenomenal. I think you are also clear and succinct. Usually when we come to this time, it's almost time up, I ask the guests to tell me what the show is called, the F show. So what does F stand for you? So for me, I always say F is for freedom. Obviously, F is for my name, which is Firdaus. F is for freedom. Raisa, what is F for you? Is Raisa there?
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. Funnily enough, the first thing that came to my mind was freedom as well.
Okay. So, I like funny and freedom. Alessandra, what does F stand for?
It stands for forest for me. And I think Brazil is facing a very huge issue on those fires at Amazon, Pantanal, and just I like to say something, just polarization because of political party. It really has to stop. If you're talking about climate change, climate change doesn't have a party. So here in Brazil, sometimes people that are activists, they are on the left-wing sides, and there's no left and there's no right. We are talking about life. Life is on the top of everything. So it's so complicated nowadays. So we get into this polarization, and it seems like if you're protecting nature or you're protecting Earth, you are into this kind of communism kind of party, and there's nothing to do with this. So very unfortunately, here in Brazil, we have a very complicated president, and somehow follow what's going on to US. So I know what Mike said, and I'm hope for the best, because we are going to face the same over here, like trying to choose how do you said that on the beginning, the worst, that is not the worstest, but anyways, I think this is a very, very important issue, that our survival doesn't have a political party. Nature, ourselves, beings, it's something that should be in everybody agenda, all political agenda, and we should have like united us as species instead of divided us into those fights for those kind of weird persons.
Yeah, I'm glad we learned the word weird too. Mike, let's come to you. And as you think about the word, F means for, but please also give us your closing statement, exactly what Alessandra did. Thank you.
Sure, gosh, F could be so many things. Of course, there's a certain cuss word, but we won't go there. But I talked earlier about the failing grade of our presidential candidates and current president on issues like climate and so many others. And of course, there's also the F word of fascism that I used in reference to Trump. And I think Bolsonaro in Brazil deserves that even more. And I wish you all the best of luck in getting rid of him as soon as possible. But maybe a more positive F would be the medical doctrine of first do no harm, and making sure that we're changing our systems so that we get rid of the technologies, the policies, the political systems that are doing harm to everybody before we go any further.
Yeah. Mandy, Amanda.
You call me that, you sound like my mother. Amanda.
Amanda, tell me what F stands for.
Okay, I'm going to say the word faith, and I don't mean that in a religious sense. I am going to give my age away a bit here. My first year at university was 1976. So my activism started with the Soweto riots. You won't be surprised to hear that I failed one of my courses that year, because I spent most of the year protesting after June. There were long patches in the years in between where I found faith in the future very difficult. I couldn't see an end to this. I remember so very well the day that de Klerk announced that he was going to unban the ANC. Running down, I didn't know what was going to happen, but I heard from somebody at the Star that something was up, you know, and I ran down into the street to wait for the newspaper, and it arrived, tossed out of the vehicle to the newspaper seller, and he took his knife and he cut the binding stuff around it, and we looked at this headline, ANC to be unbanned, Nelson Mandela to be set free, and the two of us stood there with tears running down our cheeks, just, you know, I don't believe it, this is absolutely amazing. You gotta have faith, the faith, you know, look, it happens. It happens. Change does happen, but it requires the kind of energy and effort that we all put in as the UDF, as the Black Sash, as the ANC, as the PAC, into the struggle for freedom in South Africa. And I want to say this particularly to the young people. Take hands with everybody that you can. Make links and networks and use people like me. I will help you with knowledge. I will help you with info. I will help you with grounding, scientifically and otherwise. Use whatever links and networks you can create and fight. Fight.
Well, I like that. F is for faith and F is for fight.
Yes.
Yes. We need to fight. Well, I want to thank you all for being our guests today, for sharing so generously, for educating us. I think that today was special in that we got such good information. Raisa, I think we are all rooting for you. I hope you're preparing for that matric exam. Are you busy? Are you in the middle of it? For Mike and Alessandra, matric is the final year of high school. So she's got to do really well so that she can get to university. But activism is great, Raisa. And that's what you've been doing. So definitely we're in solidarity with you. I'd like to thank you all for being with us tonight. Take care, go well, keep the faith. And we're looking out, Mike, we're all watching your elections.
Yeah.
So as Alessandra said, is it the bad, the baddest, the worst, the more worst? But let's hope. We have hope and we have faith. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Good luck, everyone, and faith.
Thank you.
Bye.